a former soldier trying to rebuild his life. Until one fateful flight changed everything. A plane gliding over the river, a sudden alarm blaring. The pilot clutching his chest. And Ethan caught in a life-or-death struggle, forced to take control. But what if that decision didn't just alter the moment, it shaped his entire future? Get ready for a story full of suspense, emotion, and transformation. Don't miss this breathtaking journey. Ethan had been working at the only bar in the small town for quite a while, becoming a part of its fabric over the years. His dream was to become a partner in the bar he had dedicated so much time to, and he was determinedly saving up for it. Ethan, who was once in the military, moved to this quiet town after leaving the service, searching for a calmer life. He wanted to leave his tough past behind and found peace here. The town's warm and welcoming atmosphere had opened the door to a fresh start for him. He quickly bonded with the locals and became a well-liked member of the community. But over the years, the once quiet charm of the town began to change. When outsiders discovered the area's natural beauty, tourism started to grow rapidly. This brought both opportunities and challenges for the townspeople. A major investor built a luxury hotel on the hill just outside the town. Initially, the project upset many of the locals. They saw the tall structures and influx of tourists as a threat to the peace and simplicity of their lives. However, as the hotel created new job opportunities, those concerns gradually faded. People, especially weekend visitors, began staying at the hotel to enjoy the surrounding nature and visit the famous nearby waterfall. Ethan's best friend Jack was also a former soldier just like him. The two had served together in the military and had been by each other's side through thick and thin. Jack moved to the town shortly after Ethan settled there. At first, Jack wasn't sure what to do with himself, but eventually he took advantage of an opportunity offered by the new hotel. As a former pilot, Jack was hired to fly a seaplane, transporting tourists to nearby islands. It was a perfect fit for him. He spent his days giving tourists aerial tours of the stunning scenery and in turn found peace and fulfillment in his new life. Even though the town's dynamic had shifted, the locals gradually adjusted to the changes. The hotel and tourism became part of everyday life. Ethan, Jack, and the other townsfolk each found their own way to thrive in their ever-evolving world. That morning, Ethan quickly got everything ready after receiving a few urgent orders from the hotel. He hopped into the bar's truck and set off. The hotel often ordered drinks and other supplies from the bar. As he drove, surrounded by lush greenery and the distant sound of the waterfall, he found himself lost in thought. Despite the town's transformation into a tourist destination, Ethan still loved it for its peaceful, old charm. When he arrived at the hotel, he found Jack waiting in the lobby. "Hey man, you got here early," Jack said, giving him a friendly pat on the shoulder. Ethan smiled. "Just here to deliver some orders. Work stuff, you know," he replied. They chatted for a bit, and Jack mentioned he was preparing to take one of the guests to a nearby island. "Their family's out there fishing. They're only here today to visit them," Jack explained. After dropping off the supplies, Ethan walked outside and saw Jack by his car, looking frustrated. "What's going on?" Ethan asked as he approached. Jack hit the steering wheel in frustration. "The car won't start. I'm supposed to get to the airstrip and I've got a guest waiting." Ethan thought for a moment and said, "I'll drive you there. Let the guest know so you don't waste any more time." Grateful, Jack immediately called the guest. A short while later, a young woman named Rachel stepped out of the hotel entrance. She had long, wavy hair that fell gracefully over her shoulders and wore comfortable yet stylish clothes. Rachel and Ethan introduced themselves. "So, you're from the city?" Ethan asked, trying to break the ice as they drove. Rachel smiled softly. "Yeah, my family went fishing on the island and I'm going to join them," she explained. Their conversation grew more relaxed as they talked about the town's natural beauty. Ethan mostly listened quietly but attentively, intrigued by her stories. Before long, they arrived at the small airstrip. Jack immediately went over to his plane and began his routine checks. Meanwhile, Ethan and Rachel continued chatting as they waited. The plane was a small but charming seaplane, frequently used for scenic flights to the waterfall and nearby islands. After a few minutes, Jack turned around, having finished his checklist. "Hey Ethan, I'll just drop Rachel off and be right back." "You should come with us," Jack said. Ethan hesitated. "I don't know, man. Flying isn't really my thing," he admitted. Jack chuckled. "Come on. The view's amazing, you could use a break." Rachel chimed in with a friendly smile. "You should come. It's going to be a beautiful flight." Ethan thought it over. He hadn't done much besides work lately, and maybe a change of scenery was exactly what he needed. "All right, fine. Let's do it, he finally agreed. They all boarded the plane. Jack settled into the pilot's seat, making the final preparations. The sound of the engine echoed around them as the plane slowly taxied toward the runway. Ethan took a deep breath, glancing at the endless sky and the vast blue landscape ahead. It felt like the start of a new adventure. As the plane glided over the river, the steady hum of the engine blended with the tranquility around them. The deep blue water below merged with the dark green of the forest. Ethan stared at the view, feeling the tension in his chest ease for the first time in a while. But that peace shattered when Rachel's sudden, concerned voice broke the silence. "Hey Jack, is something wrong with your arm?" Ethan noticed Jack rubbing his arm and immediately became alert. Jack gave a faint smile. "I think I strained it. Probably during my workout this morning," he said, trying to sound casual. But neither Ethan nor Rachel seemed convinced. Rachel frowned. "How about your chest? Are you breathing okay?" she asked. Jack's expression grew serious for a moment as he placed a hand on his chest. "It feels strange. Like something squeezing it," he admitted, his voice weakening. Suddenly, Jack began coughing violently. His breathing grew shallow and his face turned pale. Rachel's eyes widened in fear. "Jack, I think you're having a heart attack," she exclaimed, panic creeping into her voice. No. Come on Jack, stay with us." Ethan shot forward in his seat, staring at Jack's sweat-covered face. Jack struggled to breathe, beads of sweat streaming down his forehead. "Rachel, quick. Find the first aid kit." Ethan's voice was filled with urgency. Rachel jumped into action, reaching for the compartment where the kit was stored. With trembling hands, she grabbed an aspirin and yelled, "Take this now." Jack's weak hands fumbled as he finally put the pill in his mouth. But it wasn't enough. Jack's head started to tilt back. His breathing was erratic and his eyes were fluttering shut. Panic gripped Ethan as Jack slowly opened his eyes and whispered with the last of his strength, "Ethan, land the plane. You can do it." Ethan's heart pounded. "What? Jack, I can't do that. It's impossible," he stammered. But the serious look in Jack's eyes made him pause. He recalled the brief lessons Jack had given him in the past. Rachel's voice broke through his panic. "Ethan, you have to stay calm. We need to get Jack out of here safely," she urged. Taking a deep breath, Ethan pulled the headset on and placed his hands on the controls, his fingers shaking. He switched on the mic. "Tail number 306, Mayday. We have an emergency. The pilot is incapacitated due to a possible heart attack. Requesting immediate landing." There was a moment of silence before a clear response came through the headset. 306, emergency acknowledged. Airspace is clear. Lights are on. You're cleared for a safe landing." Ethan gripped the controls with sweaty hands. Okay, Ethan. You've got this," he whispered to himself. He gently tilted the nose of the plane downward, and the engine's pitch changed. As the plane began to descend, turbulence shook the aircraft. Ethan locked his eyes on the approach path ahead. "Control your speed," he muttered, recalling Jack's instructions. He knew the plane had to stay level with the water to avoid a disaster. From behind him, Rachel's calm, steady voice reassured him. "Deep breaths. You're in control. You've got this." Sweat dripped down Ethan's face as the runway lights ahead grew clearer. He made a final adjustment, leveling the plane just in time. The plane's belly skimmed the water, rocking gently but without any major jolt. The plane slowed as it glided across the waves, eventually coming to a stop. Ethan exhaled deeply, closing his eyes to the fading drone of the engine. "We did it," he whispered. Rachel let out a cheer. "Ethan, you were amazing. You really did it." Ethan turned to Jack. "All right, buddy, we're getting you out of here now," he said. Outside, paramedics were already rushing toward the plane. But even as Ethan sat there, relief washing over him, his mind was still racing with the echoes of the adrenaline-filled moments they had just survived. The ambulance sped off towards the hospital, and Ethan and Rachel followed in another vehicle. Rachel remained quiet during the ride, lost in her thoughts. When they arrived, Jack was immediately taken to the emergency room. Ethan and Rachel found themselves pacing in the waiting area, anxiously hoping for good news. After a while, a doctor approached them. "Jack's condition is stable. He had the early stages of a heart attack, but thanks to your quick response, we were able to control it before it got worse. He'll need rest, but he's going to make a full recovery," the doctor said with a reassuring smile. Rachel let out a deep breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you, doctor," she said softly. Ethan, though visibly relieved, still looked a bit stunned. A little later, they were allowed to visit Jack's room. He slowly opened his eyes and gave Ethan a faint smile. "Hey brother. You're a hero," he said, his voice weak but teasing. Ethan shrugged modestly. "I'm no hero. I just wanted to get you here in one piece," he replied. Rachel chimed in, her tone serious. "You should listen to him, Ethan. You saved both Jack's life and mine today." Ethan glanced at her briefly, feeling the weight of her words settle deeply within him. Rachel pulled out her phone to call her family. "Hey, just wanted to let you know I'm safe. Everything's okay now and Jack is going to be fine," she said in a relieved tone. Her family's concerns eased after hearing the update. Ethan sat down in the chair next to Jack's bed and leaned his head back against the wall. The stress and tension from the day finally began to melt away. A strange sense of peace washed over him. After everything they'd been through, their friendship and loyalty had pulled them through once again. He couldn't shake the feeling that this moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in their bond. Following the doctor's advice, Jack decided to spend the night resting at the hospital. While Ethan and Rachel kept him company, Rachel's phone buzzed. She read the message, flinched slightly, and then slipped the phone back into her pocket. "My dad's coming here," she said calmly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Your dad? Why is he coming?" Rachel smiled softly. "He's a bit protective. Whenever something like this happens, he jumps into action. He's coming to pick me up." Jack, curious, joined the conversation. "So, what does your dad do?" Rachel chuckled lightly. "He owns the hotel." Jack and Ethan both widened their eyes in surprise. "Wait, which hotel?" they asked in unison. Rachel looked a little puzzled. "The big one here. The one built on the hill." They exchanged glances before blurting out, "Your dad owns that hotel?" Rachel laughed at their reaction. "Yes, my dad is Christopher Walker." Surprised? Ethan scratched his head. "A little?" "Yeah, actually, a lot," he admitted. Jack chuckled softly. "So, the girl's dad turns out to be the biggest investor in town, and we're just now finding out?" Shortly after, a sleek, black luxury car pulled up to the hospital entrance. The door opened, and a man in a sharp suit, with an air of authority but a tired expression, strode inside. As soon as Christopher Walker saw his daughter, he walked quickly toward her. "Rachel, are you all right?" he asked, his eyes filled with concern. Rachel hugged him. "I'm fine, Dad. Don't worry. I'm safe now," she reassured him gently. As Rachel explained the situation, Christopher's eyes occasionally drifted toward Ethan. Eventually she introduced both Ethan and Jack. "They saved me. If it weren't for them, I might not be here right now," she said sincerely. Christopher turned to Ethan, his gaze serious but filled with gratitude. "Ethan, I owe you a lot. You're the one who saved my daughter, right?" he said, extending his hand. Ethan shook it, feeling a bit awkward. "Yeah, but Jack helped too. We did it together," he replied. Christopher nodded with a small smile. "Even so, I won't forget this. As a father, I can't thank you enough." He then turned to Rachel. "Wait in the car for a moment. I need to have a word with Ethan." Rachel hesitated briefly before nodding and heading toward the car. The atmosphere grew more serious as Christopher approached Ethan, taking a deep breath. "Look, Ethan, I'll be honest. It means a lot to me to see this moment," he began. He paused for a second, then continued, "I have cancer. But no one knows, not even Rachel." Ethan's eyes widened in shock. I'm really sorry. I had no idea," he said quietly. Christopher exhaled slowly, his gaze shifting to the snowy scene outside. "Our time in this life is limited. I want to spend the rest of mine focused on my family. Their happiness is everything to me." A brief silence followed. Christopher turned back to Ethan. "By keeping my daughter safe today, you've given me more time with her. I owe you for that," he said with heartfelt sincerity. Ethan lowered his head, feeling humbled. "I just did what needed to be done," he murmured. Christopher smiled softly. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out," he said, handing Ethan his business card. Ethan took the card and thanked him. Christopher patted his shoulder gently. "We'll meet again," he said before heading toward the car. Rachel waved at Ethan with a warm smile from the window. Ethan took a deep breath and smiled back faintly. He could feel it, life was opening the door to a brand new chapter. Ethan stayed by Jack's side at the hospital. He pulled out his phone, called the bar, and let everyone know about the situation. According to the doctors, Jack was doing well. Ethan took a deep breath, leaned back in his chair, and quickly drifted off to sleep. The next morning, after dropping Jack off at his apartment to rest, Ethan headed to the bar. The moment he walked in, everyone greeted him with playful teasing. "Look who's here. Our very own pilot has arrived, someone joked. Ethan chuckled and shrugged. Hey, who knows? Maybe I've got a backup career lined up, he joked back. Chris, the bar owner, came over and gave Ethan a friendly pat on the shoulder. You don't need a backup, Ethan. I'm not letting you go anywhere. You belong here, he said warmly. Ethan smiled at Chris and replied sincerely, That's what I want too, boss, before getting to work. The other staff returned to their duties, and the day unfolded like any other. A little later, Rachel's father, Christopher Walker, entered the bar. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Ethan and he walked over. After letting Chris know, Ethan agreed to step outside for a walk with him. Christopher expressed his gratitude again. I just wanted to thank you for saving my daughter. I'd like to get to know you better, Ethan, he said with a friendly tone. Ethan met his gaze with respect and hesitated slightly before speaking. Sir, please don't take this the wrong way, but I think your family should know about your condition. It would give them the chance to prepare and spend more time with you. When I lost my mom, knowing ahead of time helped me cope, he said, his voice trailing off as memories surfaced. Christopher paused, his eyes lowering in thought. After a moment, he looked up and took a deep breath. You're right, Ethan. Thank you for reminding me of that, he said, a deep gratitude shining in his eyes. You're a good man. After their heartfelt conversation, Christopher said goodbye and left the town. But a few weeks later, rumors spread quickly through the community. The news was on everyone's lips. Christopher Walker had passed away, and Rachel had inherited the hotel. Ethan felt a pang of sadness upon hearing the news, the weight of having known the man during his final days settling heavily on him. Later that day, Chris called Ethan over. You've heard about what's going on with the hotel in the town, right? He asked. Yeah, Ethan replied with a nod. Chris smiled softly and handed Ethan an envelope. Christopher Walker left this for you, he said. Ethan took the envelope and opened it curiously. Inside was a letter. Slowly he began to read, Ethan, thank you for everything. I understand the importance of your advice now. I'm glad I listened to you. I'll always be grateful for the courage you showed the day you saved my daughter. You deserve nothing but the best. I heard about your dream to become a partner at the bar. If Chris agrees, I've made an investment in your name. I hope this helps you achieve your goals. Ethan's eyes widened as he reread the letter in disbelief. What? What does this mean? He asked, still stunned. Chris gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder. It means I'm not just your boss anymore, we're partners, my friend, he said with a grin. With this money we can expand the bar, make it even better. There'll be enough profit for both of us. Honestly, I've been wanting to partner with you for a while. I was just waiting for the right moment to help you make your dream come true. Ethan smiled, feeling that life had finally opened a new door after all the challenges he had faced. Rachel decided to stay in the town and often visited the bar to chat with him. During these visits, the spark between them grew stronger each day. Still, neither of them was in a rush. They chose to let the connection between them develop naturally. One evening, Rachel stopped by the bar, waiting for Ethan to wrap up his work. As the crowd thinned out, she walked over and smiled. Want to go for a walk? It's a beautiful night, she suggested. Ethan grabbed his jacket and stepped outside with her. The streets were quiet, blanketed in a thin layer of snow. They strolled slowly along the path leading to the waterfall. The moonlight reflected off the snow, giving the whole scene a magical glow. Rachel broke the silence with a soft laugh. You know, when I first came here, everything felt so strange and overwhelming. But now it feels like home, she said. Ethan smiled, slipping his hands into his pockets. Yeah, this place has a way of pulling you in. I felt the same when I first moved here, he replied. Rachel paused for a moment, then looked at him thoughtfully. Spending time with you, talking to you, it really makes me feel at peace. I'm glad you're here, Ethan, she said sincerely. Her words touched Ethan, and he turned to meet her gaze, warmth blooming in his chest. You've been good for this place, Rachel. You've made my life feel more meaningful, he responded, his voice gentle and honest. They continued walking in comfortable silence, the only sound coming from the soft crunch of snow beneath their feet. Eventually they reached the edge of the waterfall and stopped. Rachel turned to Ethan. My dad always spoke highly of you. Thanks to you, the time I spent with him at the end was so much more meaningful, she said, her eyes glistening with emotion. Ethan nodded. He was an incredible man. You could see how much he loved you in everything he did, he replied. Rachel closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Thank you, Ethan. For everything you did for both of us, she whispered. In that moment of quiet peace, it felt as though all the hardships they had endured were finally behind them. Ethan gently took her hands, realizing that they could now walk toward the future together. Over time, their friendship and bond deepened. Rachel put down roots in the town, while Ethan continued to lead the bar's growth to new success. The townspeople were happy to see the two of them together. Life, with all its pain and challenges, had shaped them into stronger and more hopeful people. Standing beneath the starlit sky one evening, Ethan gazed upward and smiled. He felt at peace both in his work and in life, and ready for whatever the future had in store for him. For more captivating and inspiring stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up and turn on notifications. Your support means the world to us. Thank you.